What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today, I have 4 guests with me, and we're going to talk about Collinsville Regionals 2020, which is coming up this weekend. It is the first major event outside of Japan in the expanded format since Sword and Shield has been legal for play. The most recent NA expanded regional was Dallas, and that was before Sword and Shield was legal. This meta is looking like not even like a meta. Like it looks like it's going to be a bunch of decks thrown together. I am not going. The 4 guests here are all going. So they have been testing and trying to figure out what to make of this meta game for
God help
Collinsville. So before we go into the video, shout out to my sponsor, PotownStore.com. Best place to get PTCGO codes. Use code CELIO for 5% off. At FlipsideGaming.com, where I write free articles. So I've got with me Nick Robinson, M. Taylor, Nathan Brower, and Arlo and Neel. Nick, then M, then Arlo, then Nathan. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hey guys, I'm Nick. For those of you who don't know, I'm a player from Iowa. I've been playing quite a bit this season. I got 18th at Dallas, so I've been had a good amount of experience in expanding as of right now. And yeah.
Awesome.
My name is Emery Taylor. I write for Six Prizes. I tweet about the Pokemon trading card game in my free time. And when I'm not doing that, I'll play a few games of Pokemon.
Awesome. Arlo.
Hi guys, my name's Arlo. I'm on a team called Nerd Rage Gaming, so shout out to them. And yeah, I haven't really done anything this season. I've been making some terrible deck decisions because God help me, I played Malamar not once but twice. So I should tell you right there.
Hoping to make a little bit of a better decision this weekend.
I promise there will not be a Malamar sleeved up going into expanded.
Bro, I promise it's broke.
And then Nathan.
Hey guys, well I'm Nathan. I've been playing for a long time, about 13 years now. I'm on a busted team, the Card Guys. I love those guys. Doing really well this season. Day 2'd the last 3 regionals. Made top 64 at all of them though. It kind of fizzled.
Oh,
That sucks. But you know, it's alright. I'm gonna hopefully get 4 for 4 in Collinsville. Yeah. We'll see.
Just for the followers of this video, Card Guys is spelled with a Z at the end, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Awesome. Just want to make sure everyone can find it.
Look for the purple jerseys.
Yeah, the jerseys are pretty dope. And yeah, my guests are all kind of humble. They've all done some nice things with their Pokemon career. So they're definitely some people to listen to. But the guests I get are always pretty humble. They don't really want to brag about, winning nationals or runner-up at NAIC or anything like that. So yeah, let's get into expanded for Collinsville. I posted a question, or I made a post in Hey Fonte 2 on Facebook asking about what people want to know for Collinsville to help prepare. Asked the same thing on Twitter. So I am going to get into those questions. But first I want to just get a read on what you guys are thinking about. Like in terms of what decks are good, what decks are you kind of testing against to see like, okay, if I can beat this deck, my deck can survive in the format. M, what do you think? Tell me your thoughts, like anything. What's good, what hasn't worked, what do you think could be good? Throw it all out there.
Well, I actually published an article about this on Six Prizes today while we're recording this video, which is Monday, February 24th. But to summarize, I've been playing a lot of Zacian over the last few weeks, and a lot of Wobbuffet Bats, which are both decks that I really like playing. I think what this format comes down to is being able to play flexibly enough on the first or second turn, and either playing like extremely slow decks or extremely fast decks. There's like no space for mid-range. So like stuff like Pika is unplayable in expanded because the fast decks run you over too quickly and the slow decks just body you because you can't like beat them fast enough. in terms of what I'm testing against, I think Aggro is a god-awful deck for this event. But I know people are going to play it, so I'm respecting and testing against Aggro. I'm testing against Turbo Dark, Zacian, Ultra Necrozma. Haven't been testing against Guardian for I think what are obvious reasons.
If finals
And
didn't tell you, then nothing else.
and Roxy Chomp. So those are the big decks. I've done some messing around with fire decks. I've done some messing around with a Stone Journer Carbink Break Ninja Boy deck.
The stone.
And yeah, I don't know. I'm just playing a lot of random decks, and at the end of it all, Zacian has been the best so far. So.
Nathan, anything to go off of what M said, or any of your own thoughts on Expanded with Sword and Shield?
So like my top decks on my considerations are Roxy Chomp because it just won, and I think Aggro is actually good for this event, so I'm gonna disagree. I think Ultra. I think Ultra Necrozma was pretty good as well. I think it's kind of like the non-EX Gatekeeper. You know, if you're playing a non-EX deck and it can't, if it's not better than Ultra, then it's just not good, right? Because Ultra Necrozma does.
Except for Wildfit Bats.
Okay, sure. I guess that's different though. It's a different deck. That's not like attacking.
Wildfit Bats is insane.
Yeah. I'll agree with that. Although I've not put any thought into it, it seems pretty good. And then the turbo decks, like I would lump Zacian and Dark into the same category, and those are obviously very good.
Cool. Nick, how about you? Anything that you agree or disagree with from M and Nathan, or any of your own thoughts about Expanded with Sword and Shield?
I agree that like a lot of the basic like turbo decks like Zacian, Turbo Dark are all very good. I don't like Ultra Necrozma as much. I feel like it's just a little too easy to play around. But obviously, it's still a good deck. Silent Lab plus 170 damage is still something you have to respect. I agree with Nathan that I think Aggro is good, just because making it if you go second, your opponent can't play 4 cards in the first turn, and then the rest of the game they can't play items. So it's just a kind of a good combination. I think Trevenant is actually a very good deck going into this format for kind of the same reason that Aggro is good. You go second, you Horror House on your first turn, and then you get the lock going. You lock them down to 1 card hand before they ever get to play a supporter card, and just steal the game that way. Once you learn the sequencing of the deck, it's a very strong deck and can beat pretty much everything. But other than that, yeah, that's my main look at Expanded right now.
Arlo, anything that you've been thinking that they didn't already touch on, or anything you want to agree or disagree with?
Yeah, I'm gonna once again say that I think Aggro is also a pretty good deck. Sorry, Em.
You guys are not playing a single game of Expanded.
I played so much Aggro.
I also think like the turbo decks like Zacian and Dark are kind of the same thing. It's just Zacian's more linear, so I think it's a little worse for this event. I think a lot of counter stuff is showing up. Like I've hit more counter in Sudowoodo than I've hit Zoroark, which is not something you've seen in recent years. But yeah, I think Ultra is very strong. It's the best of the 1 prize decks, and it has a really good matchup against all the turbo decks. And it's like naturally, it's not like a terrible deck to play either. Like will be inherently strong as long as it's around. But yeah, I haven't seen anything broken. I think every deck is like balanced in some sort of way, but it's all like feels awful at the same time. Like you could roll a dice and pick a deck and probably do the same with any other deck, like same record with any other deck.
Okay.
yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I would add to that and say that I think Zoroark Garb is like virtually dead. I think the deck sucks.
Yeah, it's awful.
I think Trashlanch is like still an okay card, but I think Zoroark GX as a card is very bad. I think like Mimikyu, some people are cutting Mimikyu, so most people are leaving it in. Zoroark's just like not a very good attacker with Zacian and like so many overpowered cards in the format. But I will say that Zoroark counters is an okay deck. So I think if you are like obsessed with playing Zoroark, like the only playable variety of it would either be like some control version of the deck or with counters. But I think the control version is bad. So
Yeah, even so, you would just play Cinchino over that point.
yeah, I mean, being able to attack with Zoroark is actually relevant, I think, but yeah, you're right. Giving it 2 price is just super blows, and being able to use like a Winona engine is pretty good. So
Oh yeah.
something to consider in that sense too.
Cool. What do you guys think about, Arlo touched on it, about all the decks kind of feeling fair, or if not even fair, balanced, which in expanded format a lot of times people will complain that too many things feel broken. Nathan, do you think there are decks that feel broken, or do you think there's the potential for broken stuff like we're used to in expanded?
If everything's broken, nothing is. No, so like you're gonna go into a regional like this, especially a blind one, and you're gonna face 7 different decks, easy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so even if there is like something that's really broken, it's not really gonna like affect you too much. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. Just I mean, you can't like go in gunning for one deck, I guess.
Yeah, I think I think I was talking about before we start recording the video, that I was telling someone, like, you have to be ready, you have to be prepared to beat random GX card plus random V card plus random card from 9 years ago, because like yeah, we were talking about this before we started recording, that Black and White's almost 9 years old, and we have like 35 sets in expanded format plus the half sets and stuff like that. So there's just a ridiculous card pool, and like Nathan said, playing against 7 different archetypes or 7 different built decks in the first 9 rounds of the tournament is not unheard of, because there's so many cards to choose from. There's so many different levels of skilled players playing at this event, so not everybody's bringing a tier 1 deck, and tier 1 can also be huge with 35 sets of cards. So Nick, you played Roxy Chomp at Dallas. That you placed in the top 32 with it, and that was the deck that won Dallas regionals. What do you think about Roxy Chomp with Sword and Shield and the new rule?
Roxy Chomp is still pretty good. It doesn't like, it likes being able to play supporter turn 1. Like just being able to Roxy for 6 was always really good, just to build up your hand size. So no supporter turn 1 kind of sucks, but ultimately the deck is still very good. On paper, the Zacian matchup is a little rough because they can hit 270, but you can, if they only play 1 Delmise, and then you can use Guznag and they can't one-shot it. So you can like GX attack, great catcher up a GX, and then knock out Zacian with a Tina Chomp in a turn. So you can still win that matchup. But other than that, like the deck's still good, and like Nathan said, you're going to probably play against 7 different decks. So why not play a deck that can consistently beat most things, and which Tina Chomp can do?
Yeah, in a simple way, how I like to say it a lot of times is, like, in a blind meta or a new meta, or when a set just comes out, like, it's not a bad idea to just play something that can blow things up. Like, whatever big Pokemon your opponent has that does some random thing on the other side, if you can just knock it out, that's a fine strategy. Like, it's taking 6 prize cards against random things sounds pretty good. And so yeah, I like Roxy Chomp for the same reason. It would be one of my top choices if I was going, just because it can just one-shot things, and it has a pretty not linear strategy, but the same kind of strategy against most decks it'll face. You just want to get your damage down and then knock things out, and I think it can take care of a lot of random stuff you might see on day 1.
I was before you launch into a question, I was just gonna address what Arlo said, about how like every deck feels bad. I don't feel like every deck feels bad. I still feel like decks like Turbo Dark are like, I still think Turbo Dark's a very good deck. Even though I don't like it as much as I think Zacian is like a good play for the event. I just think specifically every deck has like a very hard counter. And some decks have way harder counters than others. And so one thing that I'm finding out is like there were a lot of things when I started testing where I initially thought I'll just play these cards and that should help like my Turbo Dark matchup or my aggro matchup or my Zacian matchup. And as I've like piloted each of those 3 decks or tested against them, like I'm starting to like refine lists to the point where like as soon as I see one on ladder, I like have a way better understanding of what each deck can and can't do. And I think it's really, but I don't think everyone will put that level of time in, whether it be because of Australia or Sword and Shield's new release or people just generally not liking Expanded. And so I think when people roll up to the event, we're going to see a lot of lists that are way too similar to the list in Dallas. And so I think while the meta will change, I don't think it'll be like some drastic shift towards like all sword and shield stuff. I think it'll be a lot of what we saw before, because a lot of what we saw before is like less affected by like the newer fairer cards that are being released so that they can be balanced in standard.
That's a good point. I like how you say that you don't think there's going to be a drastic shift. And Japan, for their Aichi's Champion League at the end of December, which is the only major expanded event with Sword and Shield that I have seen results from, they had a top 8 of decks that were completely playable without Sword and Shield. All 8 of those top 8 decks that were in Japan's top 8 there were actually played at Dallas. It was Trevenant, Zoro, I think it was like Zoro Rats, so maybe Zoro Rats didn't see success in Dallas, but it could have been played.
Rats, bro.
So there was it was Trevenant, Zoro Rats, Reshiram tag team, and not a Turbo Dark. I forget what it was, but none of them were brand new archetypes. They didn't have any Zacian V. They didn't have any Snorlax Vmax. They didn't have any of those kind of decks that we're hearing people talk about in their top 8. I actually don't think they even had Snorlax Vmax or Zacian in like their top 16 or top 32. So I think M is right in saying that in his prediction that there won't be a large shift towards.
Are you sure that had Sword and Shield legal? Because I feel like I remember seeing Zoro Rats and no, it 100% was. Yeah,
they had Quick Ball.
Played some card. Yeah, Quick Ball.
Yeah,
like that.
the Trevenant list had Quick Ball in it. Yeah, it was Sword and Shield legal. Sorry. And and Dolls won that. It was Dolls, and I think there were a Dolls at first and a Dolls in top 8. That was the other deck I missed. And that had a couple Sword and Shield cards in it as well, I think.
No, I actually totally remember.
Yeah, no, you're all good. Like, it was a long time ago. So yeah, I do think it's possible that Zacian V and Snorlax VMAX and some other Sword and Shield cards that we're hearing hype around just don't have as much success as people might think they will.
That's our Rats, bros.
Yeah, you're just gonna be staring at the screen for the next 30 minutes of the video thinking about Zoro Rats. Arlo.
Well, can I actually say something?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
So I don't necessarily disagree, but I think that statement where people don't change between regionals could be made for any regional that you in any given regional. And if there's anything that would make somebody change, a new rule might be that something, So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a drastic change. And, a lot of people have purchased Zacians for standard.
That's true.
Zacian is also pretty good expanded.
Yeah, that's a very good argument.
So, I mean, probably, it's going to be lining up with Dallas, but, on the scale of regional changes, this might be a bigger one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think in terms of like new decks coming out, I think it's a really good point that like obviously Zacian is good, but I feel like every expanded regionals we've had this year, besides Portland, we've had like a new deck. And even Portland, you could say that Kieran's top 8 Mew Mew list was like a new deck. So like we had Aggro, Mew Mew,
and then Roxy Chomp in Dallas.
Roxy, yeah, but was there one between? There wasn't one between Dallas and Portland.
No.
Right? So yeah, every expanded region we've had some new deck take like the format by storm, and people actually sort of already knew about aggro, and like obviously Mew Mew is like not a hidden card in expanded, but I think Zacian is sort of like our new deck for this regional.
Yeah, I feel like it might like kind of split the Turbo Dark population like in half. Like
Yeah.
instead of there being 10% Turbo Dark, maybe there'll be like 8% Turbo Dark, 8% Zacian or something like that. But yeah, I think those are good arguments on both sides from M and Nathan that there might not be a drastic change, but then there is a new rule change. There are some new cards, and also something that Nathan said about people buying Zacian V for standard. I remember a couple expanded formats ago, or a couple seasons ago, an expanded format when standard was basically like Buzzrock and Zoroark and Zoropod. Like the expanded regionals surrounding that, everybody played Zoroeggs and Buzzrock because they had Buzzrock built and they just threw a dowsing machine or a comp search or a scramble switch in, and then they had a Zoro deck built, so they just threw eggs and made it an expanded deck. So that's definitely something that happens, and there's plenty of reasons why. Maybe you're a more casual player, you just don't have the time, you don't want to buy a whole other deck for expanded. So while that isn't something that we think about in terms of like, oh, is this deck good or not, a lot of times, do I have the money for a whole new deck, or do I already have these cards sleeved up, can be the factor that helps a player decide on this deck over another. Arlo, so Zoroark GX in general, do you have any faith in Zoroark GX, maybe even Zoroark GX Garbodor performing at this event? I didn't think it could perform at Dallas, and then John Ang went and got 4th place, and that really surprised me. But what do you think?
Rest in peace, Zoroark. It's been a good run. I mean, the second that they printed tag teams, I was like, oh, wow, this is a little bit unfortunate. As you saw in John Ang's top 4 match, he got kind of railed by not being able to one-shot Chomp and then also getting ability locked. There's just a lot of things going on, and not being able to bridge it turn 1 also just kind of, you just get kicked in the face at that point.
Yeah.
Like, you can draw your whole deck just still like the same way, but you're not like finding any answers with what you can draw. Like, I think counter stuff is like okay, but it's like, I feel like it's kind of easily played around, but it's really good against like a streamlined deck like Zacian. So I feel like that's why I feel like Zacian won't be like as strong, because I does only have like 1 or 2 attacks it uses every game. But yeah, Zoroark is pretty much dead. I tried it and then had to immediately delete the deck on PCGO, so I've done the work.
I feel like there have been so many meta discussions by now, and even just videos that I record on my own or articles I write, that I'm like, yeah, I think this might be the one. Zoroark's not good anymore, and then it comes back, and so I really think it's gone this time.
Gone,
I really think this is the one.
Well, I think the biggest reason is just because of the no supporter turn 1, and I think that's one of the biggest things that changes deck decisions and deck building in going into Collinsville is the fact that it's really hard to play setup decks, because if you go first, it's like, well, you have a good chance of getting donked, because oftentimes you have to rely on a turn 1 Bridget to help you set up, and then it's like you don't want to go second to Bridget, because going second to Bridget feels bad, because now you're in the position where, like previous formats, every time you went second, you're like, well, this sucks because I'm going to be guaranteed knockout on my first, like my opponent's going to knock me out on their next turn, like no matter what, pretty much every time.
Yeah.
That's just why, like in like Shocklock and Zoroark decks like that just really struggle going into this moving forward.
Yeah, I played my first League Cup with the rule change. I didn't know to go second. I went first the first game, and drew past as you do, and then my opponent elixirs 3 times and knocks me out, and I lost.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was
Really cool.
Yeah.
I would add to that, to the Zoroark discussion, and just say like, so in the past, whenever I played Zoroark or played against Zoroark, it always felt like my opponent had access to their entire deck by like turn 3 or turn 4 of the game. And what I mean by that is essentially when you can chorus and prop trade 3 times, like more often than not, you're playing enough counts of the cards that are like crucial that you'll be able to hit whatever combo you want in a given turn, whether that's like some standard hypno toxic laser like choice band play, or like all the stuff that we've like seen Zoroark go through over the past few years. But I feel like we've reached the point with Vmax and like Mimikyu and Roxy and all these decks that being able to see your entire deck with Zoroark Garbodor specifically isn't good enough anymore
Exactly.
to compete with the other decks. And so like before, I even think like I'm not that surprised by John's success because I just think End Garb is just so good. And like if you dodge the Roxy at that tournament, the meta looks pretty good for the deck. He beat Shocklock and Control with Oranger and Basic Energies, which was like half the battle. And so like I actually am not shocked that he did that well, but yeah, the first rule change is awful for the deck, and being able to see your entire deck just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too, because like Arlo said that like drawing all these cards just doesn't matter enough. Like, I felt that way kind of going into Dallas, like, but I guess you're right. And Garb is a very strong combo, but in terms of like drawing my combos to then deal damage, like it felt like no matter what I drew into, because Lieutenant Surge was gone, so I couldn't double Iris anymore
Yeah.
or draw a supporter and then play Iris. So like it felt like okay, great. I'm seeing like 20 something cards after Colress and trade and stuff, but that doesn't change the fact that my opponent has a 3-prizer that can't get knocked out, and they're running through 2 or maybe even all 3 of my Zoroarks in the meantime. So
yeah.
I feel like once Surge got banned, that Zoroark just became almost like out of the picture. Like obviously John got top 4, which I had like a decent meta field for it. But I also didn't. I personally didn't play the deck because I didn't think it beat Dark good enough at the time. But I don't know. I feel like Trashland is still really strong, so I wouldn't be like completely dumbfounded if someone made like top 32 with Zoroark, but I don't think it's going to make it into the top 8 for a little bit.
Cool. So I'm going to go into some of the questions from Twitter and Facebook now. First question I've got is, can V cards break the format or have good combos or anything? So we did talk about this last week when I had some of the Team Gas members on for a little discussion about Expanded. But Nathan, do you think there's broken stuff that are going to happen with V and Vmax, since like they're not cut off by the same restraints that GXs and EXs are with some things, and they're not hit by Shrine or Choice Band, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I haven't personally thought of anything that's like super broken, but I would not be surprised at all if somebody comes up with some insane combo and destroys everybody. I will say, I don't think Stonejourner's better than Groudon.
Yeah, probably not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You can
Why-
Ninja
like,
Boy.
why-
You can Ninja Boy,
boy,
Reggie.
Boy,
Bro,
Stonejourner
okay.
doesn't have Omega Barrier.
No, but Regirock does, and then you Ninja Boy into it, bro.
Yeah,
All
you
I'm saying
Ninja Boy
is,
the Groudon, chill.
no, bro. Ninja. Oh gosh. Oh.
Stonejourner
Dude,
does have
Great
more
Capture got
HP.
printed and Groudon died in a watery grave.
But
All I'm
Stonejourner
saying
is
is,
Vmax gives up 3 prizes. Primal Groudon only goes up 2.
yeah.
That's true.
But Stonejourner doesn't get one shot by every deck in the format.
Yo, Focus Sash, Focus Sash.
Bro, yo, double Field Blower.
Can't Field Blower or Primal Groudon.
It's Primal Groudon.
Ugh,
Stonejourner sucks.
I'm simping, bro. Ugh.
I'm with Nathan on this one.
Dude, I think
I thought I'd care
I
for
still think
Primal Groudon,
Stonejourner's
but-
better, bro.
Also,
100%.
Primal Groudon sucks.
Primal Groudon's
But he's-
terrible,
Primal
awful,
Groudon
no
sucks.
good.
Primal
No
Groudon
good deck,
sucks,
bro.
but Stonejourner is worse.
Yeah.
No, Stonejourner, Ninja Boy, Carbon Break. The heat, bro. The heat. I guarantee you, bro.
Arlo,
Sorry.
no, you're good. Arlo, what do you think about V Pokemon or VMAX or anything expanded?
I don't think the VMAXs are too relevant. Like obviously Snorlax is a very good card, but it's also incredibly linear. And I've just been beating it by just like using Guzma on any random thing and getting it stuck in the active, because then they can't attack or retreat, which is kind of funny, but still. I feel like the deck has way too many limitations to get through an entire field of random jank.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you hit like any stall deck, you cannot win ever, because you just attack. You only have 4 TC and they discard every turn, so you only have so many special charges and stuff like that. But I feel like the V Pokemon, like Zacian is like pretty broken. Like hitting 230 and having a beach ability is pretty cool. But the ability that you can use counter energy on V Pokemon, I feel like would be extorted a little bit. I don't feel like it's like too broken yet. We don't have any like really broken V cards yet besides Zacian. Like Sableye with like bats and stuff is like kind of cool, but I don't think it's that great. But other than that, I feel like it'll be a little while until we have to see more V cards be printed in order for become full effect into expanded. As of right now, I just don't see anything else doing well besides Zacian.
Okay. Nick, do you think stall or control survives at all? We saw like let me see, it was Regirock Sableye that Szymanski got top 8 with. And then we also saw Hoopa Walls and some other Arin Guru dolls and stuff like that in Dallas. Is any of that still solid?
Stall and control are definitely still solid. I think one big thing that I've noticed is that when a new set comes out, like when there's a new format and expanded, stall and control still do well because people decide I want to play the new cards and I'm not going to tech for stall and control, which makes stall and control very good. And I mean, like that's exactly what happened in Dallas. No, what people weren't really teching for those wall stall things like that, and it did very well. Like playing in day 2 at Dallas, like nobody wanted to be playing against that. Like almost everybody was like, please let me not hit that. Everyone, but so yeah, no, it's definitely still good. Definitely something to keep on your radar. Know that if you don't own 4 Tropical Beach, then you should be ready to play against someone that does.
Nick,
to add on that, actually,
oh yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
I counted all the beach decks in day 2. There were 13 out of what, 80 something?
Yeah.
81. So
So
you know,
52 beaches.
Out of 6 rounds, you'll face one in day 2 if you make it.
Nick, I'm gonna hit you with a back-to-back here because this question's about Tina Chomp.
Okay.
Did it gain anything from the new set?
Not really. I mean, like quick ball is cool, but like it's like not like super game changing because you still have like ultra ball and mysterious treasure and stuff. So it has quick ball. The deck doesn't change that much. Maybe you need to alter it a little bit to try and help your stall or control matchup. Try to not lose to a singular hoop. But yeah.
Sounds good. This one goes to anyone who has some information about Trevenant Milotic. Is it the best deck or one of the best decks for the event? And can you tech against this deck?
My personal opinion, I dislike the Trevenant deck. I feel like it's very reliant on drawing the stones. It's like one of those expanded decks where if you hit it, you hit it. There's not much you can really do. I've found like cards like Roadblock Sudowoodo is getting that down turn 1 can really hinder their ability to draw through their whole deck and find everything they need. But it's like a deck that if it draws everything it needs, you just have to kind of hope you get lucky off of your cards that you find in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not like a whole bunch you can do, but it is like a really linear strategy. So I feel like people are going to like even like sticking a Wobbuffet into the active just makes them completely just like cry a little bit. So I feel like it's not the best deck for the tournament. It will be played, and I kind of respect it, but I would never like touch that deck in a million years.
Any differing opinions?
I think that deck's super good. Like, I don't think you can tech for it reasonably. Like, because you're just in this super awkward situation where you're either playing a deck that can go second and hit for relevant damage, and if you do that and take 2 prizes, and you can take a one-shot on like Trevenant the next turn, then yeah, you just win. Like unless they go for a big old Pale Moon GX and like Ace Trainer, there's really not a lot they could do. But I still think the deck is like super good. Like the only 2 decks that I really feel like, okay, so Aggro can body the deck if they just go second and Trevenant doesn't have a good enough turn 1. But besides Aggro, which is like kind of a gatekeeper in this format, like you just body a certain number of decks. Especially with a Alolan Muck, which is like super, super good for the deck. I just think that deck's like really good. It feels like it shouldn't work. Like it feels like you're breaking the game when you're like Whorehouse, Milotic, Ace Trainer, 150, put you down to 1 Ultra Ball in hand, see you later, bud. But like if you don't hit that, you're like playing a bad theme deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're okay with like going for the stones every game, like I think that's fine. I think the fact that 2 people played it, to my knowledge, in Dallas, and one of them got top 8 is like a very strong indicator of how good the deck is.
Yeah, definitely in the same boat. It's a really good deck. You play Pseudo Widow screws them over a lot because they can't draw the stones as easily. If Wobbuffet works in your deck and you start Wob, they're pretty bodied. But overall, it's a very, very strong deck. Just because of the fact that it can just pop off and win games against pretty much anything. If it goes second, it just makes it so they can't do anything.
The thing that would stop me personally from playing it is that it doesn't get a perfect lock. Like there's no chip action, and so your opponent can just draw Sycamore and and hit double elixir and start swinging at your guy. You know, like that kind of
Like, how
scares
often
me
are
off
they
of the
gonna
deck.
do that, you know?
Right? Yeah, how often? But in you know, we're playing a game with variance involved, and
Yeah.
that kind of just scares me. Like my only strategy is that my opponent can't top deck a good card out of their deck. Like it's different in standard for me with Mew 3, Trevenant, Marnie, because that's only one strategy of your deck. But with this, your
Right,
entire
you're locked into
strategy
that.
is put them down to a random card in hand and hope their random card on the top isn't good. And granted, if that happens and it's not a good card, then you only have to attack them a few more times and you win the game. But they do have that 1 or 2 turns where if they draw out of it, then they can kind of body you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would disagree with that a little bit because I've played quite a few games where even though they have like top decked a Juniper or Sycamore or whatever off their first card, I've still won the game just because by going second and not letting them play a supporter on their first turn, they don't set up very well. Once you get the Night Watch deck off, if you like having like a Alolan Muck in play, even that Juniper is still only 7 cards, and that's not necessarily power up anything for them to like one shot you back. So then the next turn, you just H trainer them again, put them down to another like a 0 card hand. You knock out their active, and you're like, okay, you're still actively locking, even if they get to draw a couple cards. Like the deck doesn't have to keep a lock going the entire game. It still does 150 damage a turn, and it's like saying do something, bud, and with a very limited card pool for you to do that.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So it's not as cut and dry as I was trying to make it out to be. Oh, they draw a Sycamore, you lose. But it's scary that your entire strategy can become kind of undone, and then they have a much better chance of actually playing a real game when your goal is to cheese them out of a game.
Yeah, I would say one final word on that is that I think Trevenant is the best play if you don't know what to play. So what I mean by that, like I don't want anyone to play Trevenant. Like don't get me wrong. Like I'm not trying to like be like, hey guys. But
meta
I think
manipulation.
Yeah, I'm meta manipulating really hard right now because okay, I'm probably gonna get bobbied if I play any. I will play Trevenant probably in some crucial winning in. I'll probably dead draw twice. That's just how it goes, you know. But I think the dex is like it's not either extreme. I think of like it being the most linear deck. Like I think Snorlax is a linear deck. Like
It
you're
is
like
literally
gonna
linear.
look 'em dead in
For
the
special
eyes
energy.
and slam down your special energy card, saying 340 HP, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Trevenant establishes such a powerful lock and expanded, especially with the Alolan Muck, and forcing your opponent to take prize cards that like if you've got fundamental sequencing ability, I think the deck doesn't require much more beyond that. I think even if you're not like the best player in the world, you can even like play a few games the night before and get a sense of the deck, or even solitaire probably, and because that's what most of your games are, and just play the deck, and you're gonna get free win. Like you will not like maybe you will get free wins off of just getting the lock off. Like the deck is consistent enough in my eyes that you will have games, even if it's only 1 out of 3 or if it's 2 out of 3, where you just will win. And so like you guys said last week, if there's one deck that I would be like that deck can go 9-0, it would be Trevenant, because like the deck just hits like the stones, and your opponent's like Ultra Ball, Energy, pass. And
Yeah.
you like knock out your only attacker, and they top deck Juniper, and they hit 7 cards, which don't get them another attack off. You take 2 more prizes. Like, it's just not a deck where I see it and I think, oh, like, this deck is way too linear to play, or this deck is like just not good enough. Like, I think it is good enough, but you can't really respect it. You just gotta kind of hope that people don't play it.
Right.
So
Right.
I just brought the list up. I have no experience with the deck, by the way. I've only heard of it.
Disclaimer: what you're about to hear may not matter.
But-
Go for it, Nathan.
Luke can cut it out if it's bad.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think Dark's popularity is gonna like go down, and I don't like that much. And doesn't this just lose to Dark?
Weakness
No.
card.
Weakness
Policy.
I mean,
That's
like,
a nice
if,
ASMR for you.
okay, so picture this, right? You go first against Dark, and then you say pass, and then Dark gets 12 energy in play.
Yes.
You lose in that situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
You are
It
correct in that
seems-
situation, but if you go second, you go Horror House, Muck, Melodic, Ace Trainer, put you down to 1.
But
So-
now, even if you're going second, though, Dark can still like do some shaman stuff and get like
Yeah,
five.
yeah,
They
five
for sure
energy in
can.
there.
For sure.
You know,
No,
I
like,
mean,
I don't
I don't
disagree,
know.
but it's if you don't
I think Dark
have
is still bad.
how many
rough
do you need to
matchup.
have in play? You need to have what? 8 in play to one-shot Trevenant without weakness guard. So if they don't have 8 in play and they don't top deck, you can just wipe through their board in like 4 turns.
True.
So I know that this deck could be Dark, but I definitely think that Dark is like the deck you don't want to see, obviously. So like you go in knowing that Dark is
sure.
pretty iffy. And I really do think you're going to be going second a lot of times with Trevenant, because either your opponent wins the flip and they choose to go first, or you win the flip and I believe you're choosing to go second with this deck. I also don't have much experience with it like Nathan, but I'm pretty sure you want to go second with this and Agrowl. So there are decks that want to go second in the expanded format. My next question is for Nathan, and it's actually about Dark. Someone asked if Dark is still the BDIF, if something else is the BDIF instead, and are we going to see less people respect Dark? So basically all Dark. Let's hear it.
Well, so Dark's popularity is probably going to go down because people are going to move over to like other turbo decks or something. But you're still going to have a lot of Dark at this event, I believe. Is it the best deck in format? I don't think I could call any deck in this format the best deck.
Very fair.
I think that we just lost somebody.
See Arlo.
Oh,
Arlo, bye.
Can I get an F in the chat for Arlo?
I'm not here to talk about Trevenant.
Yeah, no, go. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it's gonna go like you're gonna face 1 or 2 Dark for sure. I think probably.
Okay.
It's still really good. It's more versatile than Zacian. Zacian,
sure.
You know, it's more damage faster. You know, take your pick of your turbo deck. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else have anything to add about Dark?
I think the deck's bad.
The thing I like, the Dark isn't a gatekeeper deck anymore. I think it's more of like a kind of just a deck, any deck in the format you'll hit and be like, oh, okay, I have a fair chance. But it's also one of the only decks that does something broken, because both the Guyz Lords just take extra prize cards in a lot of scenarios, and it's like no other deck can do that. So I feel like a lot of people are still going to respect the deck. I know I'm going to respect the deck still, but I feel like it's not going to be in as high in numbers, because other turbo decks like Tina Chomp and Zacian, I feel like it'll be like a good even pool between all 3 of those decks.
I feel that.
Not like one giant overseer out of all the turbo decks.
Okay, to revise my earlier statement.
Yeah,
I think the deck's good.
first before you say that, I want to ask,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
what was your opinion going into Dallas on
About
Turbo Dark?
Dark?
Yeah.
I thought the deck was really good. Yeah.
Okay.
Like the biggest draw for me for Dallas was just like the deck on paper just thinking about it makes sense,
Mhm.
right? Like just thinking about like, okay, you got your basic energy, you've got your evolutions, you've got things that take extra prize cards, you've got a way to one-shot anything in the format, assuming you can use items.
On paper, it could be
On
anything.
paper, it can beat anything in the format, right?
Mhm.
Exactly. And even beyond that, you have like tech spaces for other slots. So if you wanted to play like a Toad, or you wanted to even play something crazy like DDE and like ADP, or like even Giratina or Distort, like all of these options you can play in the deck. So on paper, it makes sense. But then you start playing against decks which go Max Elixir, Metal Saucer, attach, wipe off your 3 prize, and then you go, okay, dead end, and they go, okay, knock you out, and then you go end to 1, and they go, great, Dedenne, Shaman, Metal Saucer, Max Elixir, attach, wipe out your last attacker. And you're like, great, we just played a full game of the Pokemon trading card game. And I really I think like, okay, I think Guzzler Jix sucks. Like, I think the card is like not good. And Grant talked about cutting it afterwards, and I just think the card's like really bad. So I'm not a fan of that at all. And then but I do think the Baby Guzzlord's good. Like, Weavile's good, but again, Roxy Chomp is just like, all right, Mimikyu, spread. You are not taking any extra prize cards, and I will be out trading you for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And Zacian, as I said before, runs through all your attackers. So like the deck needs to change to stay relevant. And like even against aggro, you go first, you draw X amount of cards and try to play the game. And then aggro evolves into their item lock, and then they evolve into their basic lock. And if they knock out your Weavile, you can't just lose. And so like every matchup where it should make sense, it doesn't, like half the time, not half the time, like a quarter of the time doesn't work. And when something fails or feels like it fails as often as TurboDark does, I tend to shy away from it. So like on paper, if you don't play that much with it, you're like, yeah, this deck's broken. But you play like 20 games with the deck against its good matchups, and you get bodied, and you're like, like why am I even trying? So I'm not a fan of it.
I think to defend TurboDark, I think something that it has on its side is that it's a pre-established deck,
Yeah,
and there
yeah.
are successful
people will
lists.
play it.
Yeah, for sure.
TurboDark is a good deck, and
Mhm.
like what I said, 25% of the time you don't win. Like, that's still a very good win rate, right?
Yeah.
Like 75% of your games is enough to get you to day 2 easily.
Mhm.
Like if you win 75% of your games, you'll go like 8-1 or 9-1, right?
Mhm.
But like I think the skill cap is very high, and people don't realize that. And I think the established lists that we already have are not that good. Like for the current meta, like Roxy blows through it, Zacian blows through it, counter cards like Pseudo Wudo blow through it. Like I just don't. I think the deck on paper looks a lot better than it actually is as a play for the event, unless you're like very good and very talented, like have the juice with the deck.
Anything else on TurboDark?
I agree with M, is that everyone kind of have this mindset that it's going to get 12 energy in play turn 1, when in reality, you're lucky if you get 3.
You only get
when I
11.
look at the deck,
You only get 11, bro.
You only get 11.
yeah.
Love it.
But like, I always just have all the dark patches and then none of the darks, and then I stick more of the dark patches and then draw 7 dark energy. I'm just like, wow, we're just playing broken theme decks at this point.
So
You
I've
just manually attach 7 times, and then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
7.
I've gotten multiple questions about Vespiquen and Night March. Nick, do you have an opinion on either of them, or even just both at the same time, since they're both DCE attackers with similar strategies?
Don't play both at the same time. This is not 2016.
Oh no, I'm
standard
sorry. I
World
didn't mean that. I meant did you let me rephrase that. Do you have an opinion that encompasses both of those archetypes? Like, don't play a deck that attacks with 4 DCE and relies on the discard pile kind of thing.
I think Night March and Vespiquen are both still very good. I think, and arguably times they are better than Ultra Necrozma because they can actually one-shot like V Pokemon and things like that. But it's definitely, if you're gonna play one of those decks, you have to understand you're gonna lose to pretty much any control deck. Any control deck is able to get rid of all your special energy and be happy to do it. But it's kind of nice, specifically in Night March, because you can hit so many different weaknesses. You can, like, if you play March Shadow Jax, you hit fighting, obviously you hit electric and psychic. Electric's not really relevant, but psychic and fighting type weakness are two very relevant types to hit for weakness. So it can be really easy to get knockouts with those. And obviously in this format, nobody's playing Oricorio or Karen because nobody's like really thinking about those cards. So you don't like just lose matchups because people are playing a Karen or an Oricorio, which is nice. But so yeah, those decks tend to have good matchups against the big turbo decks. Like they tend to do well against like Zacian and Turbo Dark. So pretty
Okay,
good.
so
they're
yeah,
not that bad.
Night March and Vespiquen not off the map.
I would say, like I was saying earlier, Ultra Necrozma being the gatekeeper non-EX, Bees is not going to take the first knockout against Ultra Necrozma, and then she probably just lose that matchup. Night March though, you can take the first knockout.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the decks are awful. Like okay, if you go into an event wanting safe points, which I assume is like the lowest bar for any player, like we said, you're assuming that you're playing against at least what, 5 different decks?
Yeah,
4
five
different
five
decks?
is probably
You know,
being
like I'd be
nice.
surprised if you
Yeah.
played against like at least, like I would estimate 6. I don't know about 7. Like maybe you hit like 3 Roxys or something. But I could definitely see 6. And I think one of those is going to be aggro, control, distort deck of any variety, a deck with Quaking Punch in it, and you're going to go first, and you're going to play a few battle compressors, and then they're going to Quaking Punch you, and you're going to be like, cool, you have a good deck. So I think one thing that I did going to Dallas when I played Ultra Necrozma is I was like, okay, I should be able to beat the decks that I expect to see, which were like aggro, Turbo Dark, Guardian was a 50-50. But then I played against all these random decks that I just couldn't beat. And so one thing about Expanded is you have to be able to beat the decks you don't expect to get to the decks that you do expect. And decks like Ultra Necrozma, Night March, Vespiquen, I feel like can't beat the decks you don't expect.
We call
And
that the round.
so, like,
Yeah, they don't
like,
beat
if
the
you-
other very
Yeah.
often.
And so I just don't. I think Karen's a horrible card. Like, don't play Karen this weekend. I don't care. I don't care if Oricorio, like, I don't care if Night March Vespiquen has won the last 20 cups in your area. Unless you need to like recycle all the Pokemon in your discard multiple times a game, you should not. You should turn Rescue Stretcher or Ordinary Rod. Like, but Oricorio, even Oricorio kind of blows because you don't have Zoroark, which was like a matchup it was really good in before. Where you could like Oricorio ping 2 eggs or like something like that. But I just think don't tech for it. Just like play a deck that beats the stuff you don't expect to see so you can get to the stuff that you do. And if you don't expect to see Night March and you hit one, so be it, because you'll beat all the other like janky decks.
Well, like Nick said, so I think you guys are coming from very different perspectives, kind of. So
He won a national championship. Rubbing in.
Like,
Wow.
like Nick said, you have to be okay with losing to the decks with Fabas and the decks that just play dolls and the controls and the stalls and the mills and all of those kinds of things. So where M's coming from, I feel like you're not okay with losing to the other
I
decks.
played Night March in Richmond before the bans and stuff, and you don't beat the tag team decks every time.
Yeah.
Like, I
So
don't
you
care
don't
how
even
many
beat-
Marshadow you play or how many one prizes you play or how good your matchup should be, because you just don't.
Yeah, so you don't always beat the decks that you go in thinking I'm going to beat these, and then you also auto lose to this one specific
Exactly.
kind of
Yeah.
deck. So it's definitely a kind of deck where you roll the dice. But depending on how the meta like actually goes, like you could be rolling the dice with whatever you're playing. So I want to go into I'll ask everybody one question and then we'll do shout outs and wrap this baby up. So Nick, what do you think the 5 most popular decks are going to be?
5 most popular. I think it's going to be Zacian, Turbo Dark. Honestly, I feel like Trevenant is going to be pretty popular. I think people enjoy playing the deck a lot. probably alternate Necrozma Garb, just because it's a cheap expanded deck, and a lot of people that tend to just play standard, more casual people will tend to be like, I just want to play a cheap deck. I don't want to spend a bunch of money. And then after that, fifth deck. What decks have I even been testing? I honestly think that's some people will want to play Snorlax Vmax. I think like that will see some play. I think that will be higher up there.
Mhm.
I think in terms of played decks, just because of the fact that it's new and
Yeah, that's fair. I think people have been talking about it since like 2 or 3 months ago and been wanting to play it for a while, so that's fair.
Yeah.
Give me a reason why someone shouldn't play Zacian. So what would be the reason to not play the deck?
Well, I feel like a lot of the reasons I see brought up as main reasons not to play Zacian are not incredibly convincing. So the main reason I've heard is that it's too linear, and with that you lose to counters, right? So you lose to like Mimikyu or Sudowoodo or Foul Play Zoroark.
Mm-hmm.
There are some techs you can play for those matchups. Some are good, some are really bad. Don't play Fighting Fury Belt if you take anything from this video. I think the main reason you don't play Zacian is if you don't trust your list enough. Because bad lists of Zacian are like the worst deck in the format. And I mean that in the most unironic way possible. Like, you're better off playing, if you're like not good at building lists, or you haven't had a lot of time to test the deck, or you're not getting like your information from a reputable source, don't play the deck. Like, it's just, I don't care if you've bought them for standard, play Trevenant instead. Because a bad Zacian list, you lose to Dark, you lose to all the matchups that I said that you destroy earlier. So I think that's the main reason, is that the deck does have a relatively high skill cap. I would say, like, not to say that you can't get carried by the deck, because the deck's insane. Like, the card itself as just a card in like a vacuum is very good. But yeah, I think the main reason is if you're like hyper afraid of one prize decks trying to somehow trade with all the tag team decks. And for the record, having played Ultra Necrozma for a whole 6 rounds before dropping, not good. Like, unless there might be one that I don't know about. And I think Ultra Necrozma is the best one prize deck because you beat all the other decks more than the other one prize decks do. But I'm not okay with losing to Stall, Control, and Aggro. Like,
Fair.
I'm not. And you will not win the tournament if you're okay with losing to those decks.
Fair.
And those are just the decks on top of the decks that you think you beat before they go like Guzzlord, and you whiff an attack and lose. So if you're gonna play one prize deck and you're like dedicated to it, Ultra Necrozma is the move. Sorry, I've gone on.
No, it's
but I just think Zacian is really good and can be teched, but it's not worth playing if you like don't understand expanded well or have a good list.
Awesome. Arlo, I didn't have a question for you, and shout out to Ben Cryer, just messaged me and asked me a question. So Ben, your question's out here on the interwebs. Arlo, Neel, which variant of Ultra Necrozma do you think will be more popular? Ultra Garbatoxin or Ultra Alolan Muck Octillery?
Definitely the Octillery version, because if you've ever played Ultra Garb, you know when your opponent plays that supporter card called N, you are going to concede the game. And I also really like decks that when you play a draw supporter, you have more options to draw more cards, which is why I played Zoroark for so long. Is that once you play supporter and you're with something, I'm like, it's not over. We still got this. So
yeah, so you have that with Octillery.
Yeah, having Octillery as a draw option is also just like kind of insane. Like, that card is still really good. And like Muck is still really good as well. Like, it's not Garbatoxin, obviously, but
for sure, yeah, it's very good, even especially with Zacian now.
Yeah, we're in a very big basic heavy format, and a lot of them have good abilities. So Alolan Muck's still pretty good. I would definitely play that over the Garb, but I cannot deny Trash Lance is stupid strong right now. A lot of decks are playing a lot of items because there's no supporter turn 1. Like, instead of decks playing Bridget, there's like 4 Quick Ball, 4 Ultra Ball in every deck. or some like whack counts of those cards, but I don't think it's enough for me to want to not play artillery.
I feel that. Nathan, so the big question goes to you.
Oh no.
What decks will be in top 8 of the tournament?
What decks? Okay, well,
So, rats.
yes, easy.
But that is top seed. Just guaranteed as top seed.
So I would say 3 of them is gonna be made up of turbo decks like Dark and Zacian, some combination of that.
Yeah, I like that.
I would say at least 1 Ultra Necrozma. I think that's pretty strong. Eggrow. And Eggrow's gonna be in there. What's that? 3, 4, 5.
5, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. From there, I don't know, just some random stuff.
Just anything can happen.
Just anything. There's some kind of control deck like Regirock, Sableye, or Dollstall or something like that.
For sure.
Or obviously Trevnor.
Yeah. All right, sounds good. I'm gonna throw in one more to the top 8 question. Can Snorlax VMAX top 8, or is it just a tier 2 deck that you might get points with?
I think it can.
Yes, it can. I mean, I think almost any deck can, right? But this one, you're not going to get past a lot of decks that just take advantage of the fact that you're just playing 4 triple.
Yeah.
And both Soda Widows are like really bad for you, and it's just like you're gonna hit a lot of roadblocks. Pun intended.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right.
Okay. Snorlax VMAX can make top 8 because it's Ultra Charisma, but a little bit bigger.
Also,
literally the 2 decks are like extremely similar. It's just that like you just don't win with either of them. Like it's just that. But like, here's the thing, right? It's the same idea of like, if you play Ultra Charisma and you hit 9 Turbo Darks in a row, and then like go like 2-2-1 because you're playing good players on day 2, and then you like bubble in the top 8 or whatever. Like, great, you played Ultra Charisma and you made top 8. But it's the same thing with Snorlax VMAX, where like if you hit people who don't respect it and you just run through them, then yeah, you can top 8. But like, if you hit any control or stall, which like Nathan said, you'll play at least 1, if not 2 or 3 in day 2, or any in day 1. Like it's just not. The deck struggles so much against those variants that you have to sort of, weigh your benefits or costs or benefits. I will say it can be control if you play basic energy and Oranguru and they don't play draft rig. But if they do play draft rig, you're bodied. Yeah, you just pick up your cards and you shake their hand and you say, you're so much better than I am.
Okay.
I don't even think Snorlax VMAX is safe for points. Like, I just think it just feels bad. Literally, either the Sudowoodo is just not good. Like, the only reason you should play Snorlax VMAX is if you think you just want to have fun playing Snorlax VMAX, or 2, somehow you found some way that it's so broken it beats everything, but I don't think that exists.
Also, like you're an evolution deck. You evolve from an EX. Your opponent can just get their Zacian powered up and kill your Snorlax basic guy and take 2 prize cards.
Yeah.
Game over.
It's true.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys realize, but Snorlax VMAX evolves from Snorlax V.
Snorlax evolves. He's actually a stage 1.
And
guys.
Snorlax V is
exactly.
Like, and Snorlax V is a terrible card.
At least turn 2.
Right.
Okay, but Ultra Charisma bricks every game anyway.
All right, we're cutting them off. We're cutting them. No, he's running a campaign against Ultra Necrozma. Definitely playing a deck that loses to Ultra Necrozma.
Ultra Necrozma is not even that bad. It's just not good.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Do shout outs. Go Nathan, Arlo, Nick. Shout out your sponsors, teams, friends, local Walmart, whatever you want to do. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, well, a shout out to the card guys, of course, TCGs. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook and all that jazz. Pretty busted team. They're a lot of really good guys. Shout out to the North Georgia Pokemon folks. Really, other more cool people. And I'll see you guys in Collinsville.
Awesome, Arlo.
I want to say shout out to our Nerd Rage Gaming. They've helped all of us on the team so far this year. They're pretty great. And I also want to shout out my testing partners, Isaac, Ben, and Alec. They're all like semi-stupid, but not stupid enough to not test with them. So it's kind of great.
Just the right amount.
Just the
Yes.
right amount.
Go ahead, Em.
Go read what I have to say on Six Prizes. You can follow me on Twitter at Roarchomp. It's spelled exactly like it sounds. Thank you for letting me go on tangents about one prize attackers for the last 45 minutes.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
And if you see me in Collinsville, come say hi. Tell me that you're not playing alternate charisma. Let's have a good talk. You know?
There we go.
And Nick Robinson.
Shout out to my team, Team Gas. I kind of forgot to mention that I'm on a team with the guy that's running this YouTube. Shout out to Team Gas and everyone on it. Shout out to the Cutter Tap and Team Gas group chat, Cutter Gas, and all those guys. They've been helping me theory on a lot of stuff going into Collinsville. And at Nick C. Robinson. If you want to do that. Thanks, Luke, for having me on.
Of course. Yeah, I'll also shout out Team Gas. I believe our Twitter's at Team Gas Pokemon. We kind of killed it at Dallas, and I'm not going to be there at Collinsville, but I'll be rooting for the team. Our first tournament as a team was Dallas, and we thought it was pretty successful. So our deck won, but not in the hands of one of our teammates, but what could you do? As always, check out PotownStore.com for all of your PTCGO needs, FlipsideGaming.com where I write free articles. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this 1 hour, 6 minute, and about 15 seconds by the time I wrap this up, and I'll see you next time here on Cilio's Network.